Good afternoon, everyone. It's about 1 o'clock on August 26th, a wonderful Saturday. And we are here for the newest installment of the weekly Saturday training that is co-sponsored by Western Liberty Network and Parents' Rights in Education. We have a lot of good resources available for you. And today we're going to be talking about how to overcome obstacles when trying to testify in front of school boards, or in other words, to overcome stonewalling if you should happen to encounter that when trying to testify before school boards. And so before we get into that specific topic, I'm going to share the screen and show you what happens when you go into the wonderful resource of the Parent Activist Training Center. This is what you'll see when you go to the Parent Activist Training Center. And I'm going to put in my username and password. Okay, and when you get into the Parent Activist Training Center, I will click on the Training Center. And you will see a series of different topics you can get training on. Right now, there are two: how to effectively testify to your school board, how to win your local school board election. And there are a variety of lessons in each of those. Today, we'll go into this one, how to effectively testify to your school board. Trying to get into that. Here we go. Okay, you'll see a variety of topics there: know your board, understanding your issue, preparing your testimony, a lot of different things here. And overcoming obstacles is what we're going to talk about today. So we go into that, and the first thing you will see is a video. It's a short video, so I'm going to go ahead and play that for you now.
Welcome to the Parents' Rights in Education Parent Activist Training Center, where we're training you on how to overcome obstacles when testifying at school board meetings. While it's impossible to review every situation that may occur, there are a few common obstacles people face when testifying that we can address. Before getting into the obstacles, it's important to review some guiding principles of facing obstacles. The first principle is to stay in control of your emotions. This doesn't mean you can't show or have any emotions, but do not act from a place of rashness that may hinder your reputation. If your behavior negatively impacts your reputation, there's a good chance it will also hinder the positive impact of your testimony. The next principle is to choose your battles intentionally. At school board meetings, you may have to comply with some rules or mandates that you don't agree with to be able to attend a school board meeting and testify. While you don't have to like them, you must decide if not following the rules or mandates is worth not being able to testify. The last principle is to keep your overall goal at the forefront of your mind. Remember, testifying at a school board is not about you. It is about expressing your support or opposition on an issue you feel is important. And related to your child's education. If you feel inclined to say or act a certain way, ask yourself if they will help achieve your goal for testifying. These three guiding principles will be useful to utilize if you experience any obstacles when you try to testify. The most common obstacle people face when testifying, and the one we will dive into today, is being silenced. This can both be done in virtual and in-person school board meetings. In virtual meetings, people have had their cameras and audio shut down by the school board. Other times, people have been removed from virtual school board meetings completely and cannot get back into them. Another tactic used to silence people from testifying is to shorten the time allotted for public testimonies. Despite having testimony protocols and procedures on school board websites that clearly specify the time dedicated to public testimonies, attempts have been made to cut down on that number or completely stop public testimonies. If a school board has made unwarranted attempts to silence you and other people from speaking and all normal appeals have not worked, immediately start documenting it. Film these instances and take note of current information such as the date, the location, the specific school board. If possible, also know what issue the board tried to avoid addressing. Once you have a video evidence or a written account of attempts to suppress people from testifying, contact us on our website. Broader public attention to an abuse of power with video evidence is one of the best tools to encourage change. Be sure to check out the additional material on the website to learn more about this topic, take a quiz, and complete the rest of the course to get certified.
Okay, we're back in the regular session. We had our little video, and now we're going to go into the various materials. We have someone from Maine Parents' Rights in Education that just came in, so I'd like to welcome that. I think that is Mr. Payne. So welcome back. Okay, so the first thing that we saw in the video was to stay in control of your emotions. This is critically important. I get very emotional when I testify. I know that a lot of other people do. Maybe you do as well. But you need to keep those emotions in check. Whenever you testify and lose your cool, a lot of things happen. First of all, the message that you are trying to convey is usually lost. It's not to say that you can't be passionate about what you believe in or you can speak with emotion, but if you become overly emotional, your message will be lost. You will also gain a reputation as somebody who's a little bit of a loose cannon. And it's difficult to make board members listen, lower their barriers and listen to what you have to say if they are up there wondering if you're going to be losing your cool. So you absolutely don't want to do that. Sometimes a board member will lose their cool. This is always a bonus. This is always a plus for people on our side. If they lose their cool and think that we are full of hate or whatever form of criticism that they have on parents that are simply trying to assert their rights in the schools, if a board member loses their cool, that usually serves to work against any re-election bid. It makes them look bad, especially if there's a member of the media there. You can get a recording of this if your school board is in one of the programs that's televised on public access television. Emotions are important. They're drivers for many of the things that we do, but on the same token, you want to be as professional as you can be. We do have training on how to testify and how to present yourself. That is available on the Parents' Rights in Education and on the westernlibertynetwork.org website on the training tab. So you'll want to look at that. Choose your battles intentionally. There are still a lot of restrictions that people don't like to obey. Some school districts are still observing COVID protocol, requiring that you wear a mask, those sorts of things. If you don't want to wear a mask, that's fine, but you have to decide if this is something that is important enough to you to forego your right to testify. They will not let you testify if you do not meet their criteria. Now, fortunately, most school boards are no longer observing COVID restrictions, but there are other restrictions. Some of them have mask mandates that have nothing to do with COVID, how far in advance you must testify. Some places you can just testify at the meeting, before the meeting, by filling out a sheet at the door. Others, you have to sign up to testify beforehand. This is most typically when you want to testify virtually, but that is a restriction you have to deal with. Time restrictions. When I was on the Tolton Valley Water District Board of Commissioners, we allowed 5 minutes. Many state legislators allow 3 minutes. Some school boards, and I was about to say scum accidentally, but scum school boards have sometimes cut it down to 2. So you have to be willing to observe those time restrictions. There are ways to deal with those time restrictions. One way is to testify with a group of people, each of you testifying individually, and each of you taking your 2 minutes or your 3 minutes to fully cover a topic or to cover different aspects of a topic. Depending on how restrictive your school board is, you could have all kinds of crazy restrictions, regulations, and so on. But make sure you know what all of them are and make sure that you abide by them. There are ways to get around them while not breaking them, and you want to make sure that you are able to do that. In all of this, keep your overall goal at the forefront of your mind. You may decide you want to flout a restriction. You may decide that you're not going to observe COVID restrictions if they still have them. You may decide that you're just going to let them have it and go off on a tirade against your school board, and they may well deserve it. But you're going to have to decide what your larger goal is. Usually when it comes to activist politics, two goals are competing for primacy. One of those goals is personal affirmation. If you want to feel good, if you want to let them have it, if you want to do things that are personally affirming to you and your belief system, that is one thing you want to do. Another is political accomplishment. Do you really want to, go after a school board member? If it's going to undermine your larger goal of accomplishing something politically, don't do it. So, you have to bear in mind what your strategic goal is, and then determine what tactics you're going to use in support of that strategic goal. And do not use any tactics that don't support that strategic goal. One thing, and I'd like to welcome Alan Sarvinas from Maine, and also Lily Doughton just came in, and I would like to welcome you to the session. If you would like to see the part of the session you missed within a couple of hours, you'll be able to go to the training tab on the westernlibertynetwork.org website, and you can look at the recording and see the parts that you missed. Getting back to the session, we're looking at things that school boards can do to try and frustrate the ability of parents to have their say and represent and assert their rights in the government schools. One of them is being silenced. School boards sometimes will shorten the time allotted for testimony. They will sometimes use technology, if you are testifying virtually, to shut you off. And they will sometimes, say, oh, we have a technical dispute and a technical problem, and they will shut you out, and then they won't let you back in. There are a lot of things that school boards acting in bad faith will do to try and silence you. Now, having said that, I want to point out that most school boards in America, even though we may disagree with many of their policies, do not engage in these activities. Most school boards have pretty steady policies about how to testify, and they observe it, and they don't actively sabotage the testimony of parents who are speaking before them. That said, there are some that do. And so you need to be ready for that, and you need to be ready for ways in which you can counter those actions. So if they are trying to shut you down by shortening your time, one way that you can get around that is, as I mentioned before, work with a group of people. Go with 3 or 4 or 5 people, and each of you testify individually and meet beforehand and decide what it is you want to say with your 2 minutes or however long they give you. Make sure that you sit down beforehand and say, all right, I will cover this, you will cover that. These other things would be covered by the other 3 people. And that way, even if they cut you down to 2 minutes, you're going to be able to cover what it is that you want to cover. Another thing you can do is impose a political cost. If you think they are overtly trying to sabotage your ability to testify, one of the things you can do is go to members of the media. Go to your local newspaper. Go to your local radio station. Come up with a press release saying that you and other parents have been sabotaged, and the school district has made it difficult or impossible for you to testify. Make sure that your facts are straight. Make sure that you've got, a really good case to make in this regard. And hold on, when they try to poke at us or shut us down, we are not supposed to take. Okay. Mr. Sarvina says, hold on, they try to poke at us or shut us down. We are not supposed to take the bait and create parents gone wild at the board meeting. Yeah, that's right. Don't take the bait. If school board members do call you names or try to shut you down, do not take the bait and retaliate in kind. You know, we're going to talk about documenting things in just a moment, but one of the things you can do when school boards act in this way is to impose a political cost. And going to members of the media, that's part of what you can do. Tell the reporter who covers school districts what has happened. Show them your evidence. Ask if you can write an op-ed piece as opposed to a letter to the editor. Although letters to the editor are fine as well. Ask if you can write an op-ed piece that discusses what the school district is doing. Ask if they would be willing to do an investigative or feature article on what the school board is doing. At the very least, they will cover the situation. News or radio stations will oftentimes do the same thing. And you can get the best coverage by contacting them directly and having at your side a pre-written press release that talks about the things that school boards have done to stonewall you. And documentation is an important part of that. If they are poking at you, treating you disrespectfully, trying to intimidate you, trying to shut you down, or if they do use technology to shut you down, or they make it impossible for you to speak long enough to make a cogent point, document it. The date, the time, the location, the agenda item, what they did, what you wanted to say. Make a log of that. You know, if you have a notebook with 5 or 6 different instances or more where this happened, this is a compelling documented case. This is something you can take with you to the newspaper or the radio station or the television station that you are asking to cover this, to impose a political cost on school districts that do these sorts of things. And again, another thing you can do to overcome this is to spread what you're doing out among several people. Form a testimonial team. So these are some of the things you can do to overcome stonewalling. Now, naturally, when election time comes around, you should have a slate of candidates ready to go. Try to find a slate of candidates who will be more receptive and willing to listen to parents and are of the opinion that parents and not the state should direct the course of their children's education, and make sure that you have candidates to run. As long as limited government activists are not running candidates, it is those who love government that will be making the key decisions. We need to be making those key decisions ourselves. So we encourage you to recruit people, good people, to run for school board positions and then support their election. These are the main points that I've been asked to cover today, and things that you can do to prevent stonewalling at a school board. Now I'm going to go back to the screen and show you a quiz. At the end of every one of these training sessions on the Parents' Rights in Education website, with regard to the Parents Training Center, there is a quiz. It's usually a ridiculously simple quiz, but it's meant to underscore what has been done. So I'm going to share the screen again. Okay, and here we are. So if you're ready to take the quiz, overcoming obstacles. Start quiz. What is the main obstacle people face when testifying? Does anyone want to kick in? Not knowing when school board meetings are being held, being silenced, rules and mandates implemented on testifiers. Which one is the main obstacle? Does anyone want to take a stab at this? No, we've got listeners. That's fine. Oh, I saw something flash, but it didn't last. Okay, so I think it's being silenced.
Not knowing or being silenced?
Yeah, I think they're all pretty good, actually.
I think I would.
But I think being silenced is the answer, but they're all pretty good. The next one, if your camera or audio does not work in meetings, does that mean the school board intentionally did it? Yes, no, it's a possibility.
It's a possibility. Possibility.
Yeah, I think that's the right answer. For some reason, my screen is freezing up every once in a while when I have the shared screen. There we go. What is not a way to make it politically embarrassing and thus costly for a school board to stop you from testifying? And there's contact members of the media, spread out testimony amongst multiple people, or write your elected official and tell them about the school board attempting to silence you. Who wants to take a stab at that?
Not the way.
I'll take a stab. Now, all of these are things you can do, but writing your elected officials is usually the least effective if you want to exact a political cost for a school board wanting to shut you down. When you contact the media to attend school board meetings, do you need to tell them why the meeting is newsworthy? This is a general question anytime you want the media to get involved. And I won't insult your intelligence by asking for the answer, because the answer is yes, you need to know they need to know why it's newsworthy. A lot of conservative activists get upset when the media doesn't cover what they want them to cover. I understand that. I've been in that situation myself. But what I have found is that if what you are doing is newsworthy and they have the bandwidth to cover it, they usually will cover it. Sometimes they'll get it wrong, that happens, but usually they will cover it. But you do have an obligation to tell them why what you're doing is newsworthy. And usually I think it's arguable that if it can be demonstrated through documentation, that and listing what has been done, that the school board has tried to shut you down, that is indeed newsworthy. Okay, we've got somebody else coming in. We have somebody named MJINV that just came into the room. I want to thank you very much. Just so you know, we're almost finished with this training today, but if you've missed part of the training and would like to go back and see it, within a couple of hours, you'll be able to go to the training tab of the westernlibertynetwork.org website, and you'll be able to view this training again from beginning to end. A lot more people generally watch these trainings and attend live. So we want to make it very easy for you to get this information. So are there any questions that people have about the material presented today? Okay. Let me ask you to post something either on the chat window or through your microphones. Has this information been at all useful for you today? Has it been helpful to you in helping to find ways to overcome a stonewalling school board?
Yeah, I think when we're on the ground and there's not an abundance of help all the time, it usually comes in flash or waves that we can forget to reach out to local media to make sure it's covered, or at least attempt to have them cover the meeting if it's an important meeting.
Sure. You know, some things that are relevant to local newspapers, they're struggling now. A lot of them aren't going to be in business in a year or so. Others will, but they're still gonna struggle. Lily's coming back. And so if you can make it easy for them to put out a product, they're gonna love you. If you go to them instead of make them come to you, if you go to them and you have documentation of times where the school board has stonewalled you or cut you off or treated parents badly, if you have that documented and you have any of those examples on video, or you can just describe them accurately and you can come to them, they will love you because it's relevant to schools. Schools generate articles that people want to read. They won't have to work out hard to send a reporter out to talk to you. You'll be right there. They've got deadlines and they want to get their stories done quickly, and they don't want to waste time getting in their car, driving around, going out and getting things, or hunting people down on the phone. If you can go to them and you can give them documentation and you can give them information about a newsworthy item that will make them look good, that will give their paper some content that people will want to read. If you can prove yourself as a person who can do this for them, you'll be gold to them. They'll cover the stories that you want them to cover if you're able to do this consistently, and that you will be a go-to source when they do need to reach out for information, because you'll be a reliable, accessible person who gives them the information they need. And if you're able to do these things, you will be gold to them, and you can use local media to promote your political agenda. Are there any other questions or comments today? We've got Debbie, we've got Lily, we've got Donna, we've got D. Payne, Alan, and MJINV. Okay, if there are no more questions today, I see Alan just turned his microphone on. Do you have something to say, Alan?
Well, I had a quick follow-up story, or actually what happened here in terms of notifying. The first time we did remember to notify the media at the high school here in Topsom, Midcoast, Maine. It's a very it's a blue area, liberal area.
Sure.
So when parents don't necessarily agree with what's going on, they still don't show up. We get calls and texts from teachers. But anyway, so we put on a rally at the high school, and we called and got approval. We had a DJ there, a big screen. We set it all up so it could be an effective rally. And so we reached out to local journalists to come out. And what happened is that only a few people showed up, but a young journalist that just started at the local newspaper came out. And it was funny because one of the guys that helped us, Craig Caffrey, he's a member of Parents' Rights and Education.
Mm-hmm.
He thought the journalist was from the high school. But she wasn't. So she ended up looking at the material we had, doing a follow-up interview with myself, and gave us a write-up in the local newspaper that was the fairest we ever expected to get. And what it did actually is it kind of caught the board and the ones that I just flat out opposed off guard, and they ended up calling us a political group during a chair report, which then kind of, like you said, kind of opened the door to, then report on that and push that out. Like, look, they're defaming us, blah, blah, blah. So being effective, it may take a little bit longer, but it does lead, it does create leads, and eventually they will, show their true colors if you're patient enough.
Sure, that's right. That's a great story, and that's a perfect example of how these sorts of tactics work. And remember, when you hold an event like that, as you've pointed out, it's not always how many people come, it's do the right people come. And in this case, the right person was the newspaper reporter who was young and ambitious and wanted to do some work. You're going to find that a lot in community newspapers. The reporters are getting younger and younger all the time because they don't pay very much, but they're still, they come out of journalism school. They want to be the next Woodward and Bernstein. They're burning with energy, and they will try to do a very good job. But in this case, although your audience was small, it was a good audience, and the quality of that audience made it possible for you to project your message out to a much wider scope, and you experienced success. So nice work is all I can say about that. Is there anything else today before we call it a afternoon? Okay, all right, we will call it an afternoon. There will be another topic next Saturday. Stay tuned, you'll get an email about that. And as always, you can go to Parents' Rights and Education website, and you can go to westernlibertynetwork.org website to get more information. So have a wonderful weekend. Take care.